Aloha, Maikako. My name is Doug Harper. I am the Executive Director from Maunalua, and I want to welcome all of you to the Fall Internship final presentations for our 2021 Fall Intern cohort. I want to thank all of you, like I said, for coming here. This has been a big part of our program of the organization is our internship program, and it's been great having this cohort. This is, I think, probably the 6th or 7th we've had in a row, and they've done incredible work doing everything from building upon previous projects from years past to creating new things that are addressing needs that the organization has identified. And so for this presentation today, I'm going to give a little bit of a background about Maunalua if you aren't familiar with us or the Bay that we work in. Talk a little bit about how the internship program fits with the organization and our mission, and then hand it off to the interns themselves and let them go through and talk about what they've been doing for the past 10 weeks. You should know, and I'll mention this again later, is that what you're going to see is their final core project, but they've been involved in a whole slew of different things throughout the past 10 weeks. So be impressed with what you see, but know that that's only one slice of everything they did. So for those who aren't familiar, there we go. I think one person that wasn't familiar was me, how to use this computer. For those who aren't familiar, this is Maunalua Bay. It is in southeast Oahu. It is also known as East Honolulu. So for those of you who really aren't familiar with Oahu, on the left side of the picture there, you see Honolulu. This is one of the largest bays in the state of Hawaii. It's also one of the most degraded. Prior to the 1950s and 60s, it was a very agrarian area. There were farms, there was fish ponds. The largest fish pond in Polynesia was here, and it was an extremely abundant marine life with everything from lobsters to coral, and to I mentioned estuaries and the fish ponds. But then in the 1950s and 60s, significant development took place. And so you can see in this picture, all of those gray areas in the Maunalua Bay region is development that took place for the most part in those 50s and 60s. And with that came a whole slew of issues and challenges to the ecological health of the bay. That development created not only pollution and runoff from the land that found its way to the bay, and those of you who live around Maunalua Bay now have probably seen how brown the water gets after this recent rainstorm. But those people that came into Maunalua Bay also brought with them significant utilization of the resources that further degraded the bay. And then so for about 50, 60 years, this was taking place and the bay was slowly degrading. Then in 2006, a group of longtime residents, Kapuna, longtime families of the area were tired basically of seeing that the bay was degraded and there wasn't an organization focused on restoring the health of the bay. And so they got together and formed Maunalua with the mission of the organization being to basically reverse the trend that we were seeing in the bay and restore the ecological health. This means that Maunalua takes on everything from science to management to policy to education outreach to volunteer and community engagement, and takes on all the different areas that actually impact the health of the bay from the ridge out to the reef. And the way the internship program fits within this, 10 years ago, we created a conservation action plan. And what that is bringing together the leading longtime community members, experts, researchers, scientists, and saying, what are the biggest issues we see with the health of the bay? What are the threats that we need to be prioritizing? There were 3 that rose to the top: invasive alien algae, stormwater runoff, and overutilization of the resource. So every year, we look at that and identify what are the projects that we've done in this past year that were successful that we want to continue, and what other projects are available or gaining momentum or might be opportunistic for us to pursue and address. And so we come up with this list of projects that need to be done for the furtherance of the restoration of the bay, and we look at staff. What do we have the capacity to do at the moment? We only have 4 full-time employees. And so we look at them, look at the 4 of us rather, and say, here are the 10 things that we need to do. How many of these can we do? That, of course, leaves gaps. There's always going to be projects that we can't undertake. And that is where the interns come in. They're a huge component of helping us restore the bay. And unlike a lot of internship programs, the work they are doing is directly applicable to what we're trying to do. And it helps us really address everything from the science to the management to data collection to community engagement. And as I mentioned, that's not all they're doing. A lot of the work they did the past 10 weeks was working with partners, helping them with their projects. You can see they're working in hayhouse, they're working on reforestation, they're doing scientific assessments in the bay. So they did a whole slew of different projects. And as I mentioned, what you're going to see is their main one, but know that there's so many more branches to that tree that they were involved in. So before I hand it over to them, I want to offer a big mahalo to the organizations that have made this possible: the Cook Foundation, Marisla, the Long Foundation, the Midyar Group, and the Koaniani Fund with the Hawaii HCF, and a big one to the Atherton Family Foundation, who has provided a lot of the resource for allowing us to do this. So finally, the protocols for the meeting. I think everyone after 2 years of COVID is probably used to this, but everyone's microphone is going to be muted. Their screens are going to be blacked out. The interns will have approximately 6 to 7 minutes, and they'll have a couple of minutes for questions. Please type into the chat what your question is. You can type it in at any time. If you're listening, a slide pops up and you have a question about it, type it in. And at the end of their presentation, we will hand it over to them to let them answer some of those questions. And also, if you're unfamiliar with this, I think now Zoom has changed to where you can actually see the speaker as a picture-in-picture. But if you don't see the speaker when you're looking at the slides, minimize the screen and you'll be able to see both. Lastly, because we want to make sure that we try and stay on time, in case someone is logging in for a specific talk, we will try and stick to every 10 minutes the new speaker. So if we end early on a specific speaker, there may be a couple of minutes before the next speaker begins. And with that, what is the time at the moment, Alex? 6:10, perfect. I'd like to welcome Alex.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Doug, for the intro. My name is Alex Torres-Tarver, and I'm going to be giving you guys a brief presentation on my project, which was using urchins to manage invasive algae in Maunalua Bay. First, a little bit about me. I'm from Berkeley, California. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and studied environmental management and protection. I joined in order to grow some of my technical skills in natural resource management. I'm also new to the island, so this was a great opportunity to connect with organizations doing environmental work and learn a little bit about all the work that's going on here. So we'll jump right into it. First of all, the problem that we're dealing with, like Doug mentioned, invasive alien algae, or I'll call it IAA, is one of the big issues that faces Maunalua Bay. These are non-native seaweeds that are among the biggest threats to coral and native sea life. They crowd out and outcompete native species. They degrade water quality by holding on to sediment and pollutants. And so they're really a huge issue here. And you can see on the right side of the screen, the three main species that we're dealing with in Maunalua Bay, which is gorilla ogo, leather mudweed, and prickly seaweed. Doug talked a little bit about it, but has a history of working on IAA. So the Great Huki in 2010, where they pulled 3 million pounds of algae. And since then, they've had ongoing IAA management through their volunteer Huki events. And these have done a really good job pushing back the growth of invasive algae, but they do present some challenges like getting volunteers to some of the harder to reach regions of the bay. It's also time intensive and requires people in the field on a regular basis. So we wanted to explore another tool that can use to control invasive algae. So just a brief project overview. The goal was to test the use of native collector urchins to control invasive algae in Maunalua Bay. We wanted to do this by releasing 6,000 juvenile hatchery-raised urchins and answer two primary questions, which is, do they survive, and what is their effect on the abundance of invasive algae? A bit about the history and significance of this project. So this is a collaboration with Division of Aquatic Resources. They've been working with urchins for over 10 years and had a lot of success managing invasive algae with these native collector urchins. They actually have a hatchery where they raise them in order to be released into the wild. got involved in urchins first in 2018 with just a small trial experiment, a small pilot. And then what we were doing here these past 10 weeks was actually expanding into a second phase of that experiment, which involved releasing a lot more urchins and studying them. And so, like I said, this could be a really cool tool for to use in their goal of restoring the health of the bay. So a little bit about the urchins themselves. We worked with collector urchins. These are native herbivores. They've been shown to eat several different species of invasive algae, including the ones that are present in the bay. These urchins are easily raised in captivity, which DAR raises at an urchin hatchery, and they don't eat coral like some other species of urchins, which is obviously really important. So the actual project itself, there were 4 main components that I worked on during the last 10 weeks. First, the goal was to develop a protocol. So this was a document to outline the methods and the data that we would be collecting. After that, we had to select our sites for releasing the urchins. This actually proved a little bit difficult finding sites with enough invasive algae, which is a testament to the great work that MM's volunteers have been doing. After that, we deployed the urchins and then returned on a regular basis to collect data. We utilized, for the sake of the study, 4 study cages. These were smaller enclosed areas where we knew we'd be able to find the urchins or would have the best chance of finding the urchins, and had a finite number of urchins in a known space. As you can see on the picture on the left side, the urchins are really small. They were juveniles about the size, smaller than a quarter. So we really needed to make sure that we could find them in the field. As far as deployment went, we released most of the urchins in the open, free to roam. And then 40 of them were released in these study cages so that we could keep closer track of them. We had a great team of staff, the interns, DAR staff, and some volunteers. Just a few photos from the day. So top right is installing one of the study cages. You can see the urchins were really small when we first released them, and we were hoping they'll grow from that small size to about palm sized. And we pretty much just walked the plots and dropped a few of them at a time. Monitoring and data collection involved collecting baseline data to know what the area looked like in terms of invasive algae before we released the urchins. And then we did weekly checks on the study cages to count the number of living urchins in there. This was done by snorkel and was quite challenging. As you can see on the photo on the left, they're small and really hide in the algae. So it involved a significant amount of effort. As far as some of the early results, in the cages, we were able to account for about half of the urchins. We did have some fatalities at first, but that was to be expected since they were changing environments from the hatchery to the ocean. By week 2, we were a little concerned as we only found 2 urchins in all the cages, but as they grew bigger, they actually got easier to find, and we started finding more and more of them in the following weeks. And we did observe significant growth in all the urchins, which was a great thing to see because it means they're feeding. So what we've learned so far, this project is still definitely in its infancy. Those urchins have been out in the water for about a month now. But in that month, we've seen good survival and growth, which is a really good indication for future projects. As far as our second research question of the effects on invasive algae, that's kind of one of the next big questions for this experiment. So we still, like I said, the urchins have only been there for a month. So we still have to collect a lot more data on the impact that they've had on algal abundance and how they've survived in the open plots outside of the cages. Once we have a little bit more data, we'll be able to draw some conclusions. But even based off what we have so far, we know that the urchins so far have been surviving. And it's worth beginning to consider the expansion of this initiative and growing it into future projects, because even though 6,000 urchins sounds like a lot, it's actually not that many. And so, yeah, it was really great to see them surviving and growing. So as far as my takeaways from time with I got a great opportunity to practice some of my scientific skills. Like I said, drafting a protocol, a scientific document was really helpful. am creating a manual for future Urchin projects so that people can get up to speed quickly and have an idea of some of the challenges that we faced in designing this experiment, and created some outreach materials to be used with the community. It was really fantastic with seeing how effectively uses the power of the community around them. So the volunteers do amazing work on a weekly and monthly basis in the Hukis and Hanapukoa, and it's incredible to see how much they can actually get done with all that volunteer power. Before I wrap up, I want to say thank you to for bringing me on to do this. It was really an incredible experience personally, and also a huge thank you to DAR. Without them, they raised the urchins and helped us plan this project. Without Division of Aquatic Resources, this wouldn't have really been able to happen. So a huge thanks to them. And thank you to you all for logging on tonight and listening. I'm happy to take questions if anybody has it. Any questions from the audience? All right. Yeah, how big will they get? So they started off as a, so the question was, how big will the urchins get? And they started off as about anywhere from penny to quarter sized, and full grown, they'll get to roughly the size of your palm. We didn't get have any grow quite that big in the month that they've been out there, but they have gotten a good bit of the way there. So, yeah. All right. We don't have any other questions. We're going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you very much, all. Oh, now Alex, you can answer them directly from your laptop if you want. Yeah. So another question was, any concerns about people harvesting them as they get larger? Not especially. They are really hard to find. Even just in the time we spent monitoring them, they are pretty good at camouflaging themselves. They're called collector urchins because they latch onto things. They collect things to help hide themselves. So not too worried about that. Another question was, will there be continuous monitoring of the urchins and their effects on the invasive algae after this? Yes. So we're about a month into it, but they'll definitely be continually monitored in the future so that we can collect a little more data on how they've impacted the invasive algae. Yeah, and I think that's all the time we have. So thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Alex. That was very informative, and everyone seemed to have a number of questions there at the end. And so what we're going to do, like I said, just to kind of keep things on time, is Alex will go back to his computer and type in some of the answers. So check the chat. We'll try and answer everything that was asked. But first, or now, I would like to introduce Hella.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Isabella Margerin. And my presentation is going to be on the restoration of Cocoa Head District Park Rain Garden. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Toronto, Ontario in Canada. I'm currently a senior at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, majoring in natural resources and environmental management. I'm specializing in soil and water conservation, and I wanted to intern with Malama Maunalua to gain more experience in coastal ecology and be able to serve the community. So a little history about rain gardens at Malama Maunalua. The first rain garden was installed in 2011 at Kaiser High School. In 2013, they installed rain gardens at Cocoa Marina Shopping Center and Cocoa Head District Park. The Cocoa Head District Park project was a really big deal because it was in partnership with the EPA, as well as three distinct departments of City and County of Honolulu. In total, there have been 8 rain gardens implemented by Malama Maunalua. So on the bottom left, you can see the Kaiser High School rain garden. In the middle is one of the Cocoa Marina rain gardens. And then on the right is the Cocoa Head District Park rain garden when it was originally installed. So you may be asking, what is a rain garden? A rain garden is a management practice that is used to reduce flooding as well as filter a lot of pollutants and chemicals out of runoff that may be coming from impervious surfaces such as parking lots or streets. So as you can see, the rain runoff will be directed to the rain garden. So in our case, Cocoa Head District Park has a lot of asphalt in the parking lots. So that runoff will be directed to the rain garden. This water then collects in a sort of depression in the center of the rain garden where it seeps through the soil as well as the plants. And this will help absorb and filter out pollutants. And then on the bottom right, this clean water will filter out and eventually, in our case, reach Maunalua Bay. So here's kind of just a basic layout of the Cocoa Head District Park rain garden. As you can see, there's a total of 6 garden beds, and in the center is that collection basin I was talking about, where the runoff will permeate through the soil as well as the plants. So why the restoration of Cocoa Head District Park and why now? Malama Maunalua, one of their main goals is to protect and restore Maunalua Bay. So that also includes a lot of terrestrial projects if we're trying to look at things from Maka to Makai. So Cocoa Head District Park continues to be a large contributor of sediment and pollutant runoff to Maunalua Bay. And the park is a really central spot in the Maunalua region for tourists and locals to learn about what a healthy watershed is and what rain gardens are. So the main component of my project was organizing a rain garden workday. So that was this past November. We had around 25 community members and volunteers come out, and we outplanted over 150 native plants. So our partners on this project were Protect and Preserve Hawaii, Keiki and Plow, a local farm, Huiku Maliola, a native plant nursery, and the city and county of Honolulu. So you can see some images from the workday on the bottom of the screen. And so why are we planting native plants and what did we plant? So native plants have really complex root systems. They're able to prevent erosion as well as retain soil, and they also are able to, like I mentioned, filter out pollutants and sediment. So some of the native plants we outplanted were sedges like ahuava, we planted a'ali'i, and then trees like ohia. Another component of my project was social media outreach. So in collaboration with Laura, we created this flyer for the Rain Garden Workday that was distributed to advertise it. And then on the right is an infographic on some of the plants we outplanted, which was posted on Instagram. And a big part of community outreach and engagement is education. So letting people know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So now I'm just going to go through some before and after pictures of the rain garden. As you see in the before, the rain garden was really just covered in grass. There were also some weeds. And then in the after, this specific garden bed was planted with Alima. You can see the compost that we're using, as well as the mulch. The compost was made up of invasive algae that our volunteers removed from Maunalua Bay. And the compost and mulch are to create ground cover as well as provide nutrition to the plants. So here's another one of the garden beds. In this one, we planted a combination, like I mentioned, of sedges. So there's some ahuava, there's a ma'o tree, as well as some other ground cover. Here's another before. This is a row of a'ali'i. And then again, another combination of some sedges and ground cover and trees. So what were the outcomes of my project? The main big thing was a functional rain garden. So the rain garden did serve a purpose before. It still was directing a lot of the runoff and stormwater into the depression, but with the native plants, it's still able to retain more soil as well as filter out those pollutants and sediments. We also, a big thing for Malama Maunalua is helping engage the community with place. So getting some of those community members involved and hopefully having people come back to help maintain the rain garden in the future. And then I also produced an updated rain garden manual, which included a native plant list. So next steps would be regular maintenance of the rain garden, including continually engaging the community, data collection, so data on native plant survivability, looking at the algae compost, as well as pollution and sediment collection, and then education and outreach. So Cocoa Head Rain Garden can be used as an educational tool for the community. Maunalua Maunalua has adopted that part of the park, so bringing in community groups is really important. And then just a general overview of my internship experience. I thoroughly enjoyed working with Maunalua Maunalua. I learned a lot of new things. It was great being able to network and kind of meet new people and learn more about the environment here in Hawaii, learning about native plants. One of my favorite memories was from our workday at Ulupoheo last week. We helped in the creation of habitat for native wetland birds, and I think this internship experience is really important for people because it's really important to connect with the place, like I mentioned, where you are, learning about the people, learning about the plants. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity. And yeah, so mahalo for listening. I just wanted to again say thank you to our partners on this project. So Protect and Preserve Hawaii, the City and County of Honolulu, and Keiki and Plow, and of course, Maunalua Maunalua. So thank you for listening. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Bella. And for Bella and Alex, as you just saw, they took on some projects that either in Bella's case kind of revitalized a project that we had undertaken years prior, or in Alex's case, took the ball and moved it forward from a test that we had done several years ago to now starting with the implementation. But what you're about to see from Mija is a new project that really is going to address a whole slew of potential needs for us. And so with that, Mija.
Hello, my name is Mija Wheeler, and my project was piloting the KiloCam project. A little bit about me. My name is, or how do you say my name? I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I'm currently finishing up my first semester at Kapiolani Community College, majoring in electrical engineering and computer science. But most of my experience with programming and electrical systems comes from being on the robotics team for about 4 years. And I initially wanted this internship as a way to learn more about how different sciences are being applied to conservation projects in my community, just so I could learn more about how I could use my major and somehow apply it to other sciences and other things outside of just my comfort zone of robotics. So the original developer of the KiloCam is a PhD student from UH Manoa. His name is Austin Green, and he originally designed it as a low cost and low power habitat monitoring system in comparison to the GoPro. So as you can see, the cost difference and just off the bat is the most significant kilocams being worth approximately $40 each, next to the GoPro, which is about $500. The next significant factor that leads the kilocam to being more effective for habitat monitoring is the battery life is significantly longer. Using a battery that has the voltage of approximately a third of a AA battery, if it's taking pictures every minute, it can last 2.5 days. If it's taking pictures every hour, it can last 2 to 3 months. Standing next to a GoPro that can only take videos of 2 hours is a significant difference in terms of how it can be used in the field to replace time-intensive surveys of like watching coral grow or something. But the most important thing about the kilocam is that it's adaptable and it allows the users to change it how they need it to. So they can set the time that they want it to start and stop taking pictures to adjust for like sunrise and sunset. They can change what day they want it to start at. So if they wanted to start it on the 6th day of every month, they could do that as well. They can also change the frequency between pictures. So they can do it every minute, every hour, every 30 minutes, however, whatever they want to do. And they can also change the hardware. If you, for whatever reason, wanted to do something longer, instead of like a AA battery, you can use something up to a 5 volt, and you can change the power distribution how you'd like it to. And it's mainly going to be used as a way, as a surveillance tool to be used for outreach and data collection. So as just kind of generally going over the physical components of the kilocam, right here is the actual camera that's taking all the pictures. The ESP32 cam is a commercially available board that can be bought for about $20 or $25. The SD card, this is the kilocam board, which has all the software that's being run through the camera. And then inside of the waterproof case that we bought off of Amazon, we're also including silica gel packets, like the ones that come with like, I don't know, cabinets, which reduces the amount of condensation within the case itself, especially when it's like underwater. And the general goal of this project in like with Maunalua was to build and test 10 kilo cameras. And we were gonna deploy it with Alex's Urchin cages as a proof of concept about is it actually waterproof? Are they taking good pictures? What are the type of things that we're actually seeing from it? And the goal was to review like how well were the cameras able to survey like the general environment from day to day. And finally, my goal was also to develop a layman's guide to building these cameras as well as operating them as a way to make this easy to use for someone who may not be like a tech person like me, just so that anyone can do it and anyone can kind of use it for whatever project they'd like to. Okay. Yeah. So when we deployed our cameras, I deployed 6 cameras between 4 of the urchin cages, and they were mounted when the sea urchins or when the cages had already been released out. So they were kind of mounted while the cages were underwater, and they were out there for a total of 15 days. The cameras were set to run hourly from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., which was the time of sunrise and sunset at that point in time. Upon review, we received 3 functioning cameras, 3 of which I believe the other 3 having gotten disconnected due to getting jostled around as we were bringing them out there. And in total, we've collected 600 photos throughout those 15 days. On the right-hand side, we see 1 photo of algae and stuff from one of the cages. The bigger, I guess, picture of this project, besides like currently of this pilot project, I'm currently working on a program that will automatically assign timestamps and dates to all of the photos that are being captured, just so that it's easier for whoever's looking at the data to actually be able to like, hey, I know what day and stuff, what day and time this was taken at. I'm also working on writing the operator's guide to go from start to finish, just so that it's easier for anyone who's ever going to be doing this. And sometime this week, I'll also be training the current MM staff to building and operating these kilocams. Some of the other technological projects that this could be updated with is working on data collection and methodology of analyzing data and even just like operating it on the field. Also, further projects could be learning how to have code to use the onboard proximity sensor to possibly use it for surveying fish or something like that. And even maybe possibly using, figuring out how to do 3D printed mounts, which would allow you to change the field of view or whatever resolution that can make use of currently existing GoPro lenses. Some of the general applications of this project, besides just looking at urchins, could be like putting them on coral survey, like coral tables to look at coral fragmentation, maybe possibly using them for fish. Since this project is in its infancy, what it can do is so, like, I don't personally it's kind of limitless. And especially since it's something that we can modify to our whim, it can be taken a lot further than what it's currently at. And with that, well, so in closing, I think this project, like the pilot itself, proves that the KiloCam is successful and can be used as an actual tool for data collection and like looking at surveying habitats. I also think coming off of this, my first internship and my first semester of college, I really appreciated this project as a way, not this project, but just this internship as learning more about like my community and the science that's going on. I've been here all my life and I'm like, I've learned so much in like 10 weeks than I have in like years. And I guess special thanks also to the Maunalua for giving me the chance to do this project and learn a lot, as well as Austin Green for laying the groundwork for this project. So with that, I open to questions about the KiloCam. I don't think I have it on my presentation, the KiloCam pictures, but I do have them on my computer. I'm not sure how that would be shared. For the connection problem, what I discovered is that when I put them in the cage, let me go back actually. Yeah, so if you look at this is how I initially did it, where the board was here and the battery was here. That kind of got like moved around a lot. So to change that, I'm reoriented this battery to lay this way so that kind of props the board up so that it doesn't move, like kind of perpendicular. Yeah, or I guess the question was, how do you fix the connection jostling problem? And I guess another solution to that is just not having it in like a dive bag that was on my back and swimming out there, maybe putting it on like a board of some sort. Next question is, were you able to observe any unique or interesting phenomena with your KiloCams? Part of the things that we kind of initially did, or that I discovered, is that since we didn't have a chance to test it on the actual cage, and we were kind of guessing on like what I was looking at. So some of the pictures that I have is just them looking straight up at a cage. I think one phenomena though is that for some reason on one of the cameras there's like a gray bar, but I'm not sure if that's like relevant to the environment. There might be a fish on one of them, I don't know. For the KiloCam, I believe there's a video that has a pretty good, like a video by Austin Green under his YouTube channel. Austin Green, I can go back to it after, but he has a list of like all the like what you need. Like there's a document with the overview, but also an instruction video. So that's pretty good about that. Is there anything else? Is there any other questions? No. All right, cool. All right, thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you again for calling in and listening to what the interns have been doing for the past 10 weeks. As I think you have seen, it's an incredible array of projects that are amazingly important to the organization as we move forward in restoring Maunalua Bay. If you want to continue to follow along with some of their projects. For instance, I saw Amy was asking about where can we see pictures on the KiloCam, the Urchin updates, and then of course the rain garden. The rain garden's easy, go visit it. The others, we're going to be providing updates periodically through our social media, so follow us there. You can check the website. And finally, thank you again, everyone. Stay safe out there. Have a good holidays. Mahalo.